Hi, I'm Chris Nicholas. I'm the Vice President of the ELPO. Today I'm going to show you the process of building a double nail pad system. We have just our simple tools on the table, and it's handy just having this all laid out before you even start. What do you need before you get started on a project? So when you're dealing with the black plastic, it's really handy to have a silver marquee so it shows up. Your black marker does not show up near as well. You can see it, but it doesn't show up as well. Pair of dividers, it's handy to have a ruler, a small drill bit. This is maybe an 1/8 inch. Phillips drill bit, countersink attachment. These are just simply a sheetrock screw or a bugle, this is what they call them, screw that has a tapered head and a sharp point. And they're coarse, they're very coarse thread. Cordless drills are a way to go. They're just super handy. And there's a difference between a cordless drill and a cordless impact. Impacts work really well for putting your screws in and out, and they strip way less likely when you're using an impact gun. Horses do not seem to mind it at all. You're going to want a grinder. This is a cordless grinder. You can have a grinder that plugs in. You can have a bench grinder. There's multiple tools. A jigsaw. And these are the basic tools to do the process of building a double nail pad system. So for a double nail pad system, there's a couple different options that we have. These look right off the shelf very similar, but they're two different materials. One's hard and one's soft. This one is made out of a plastic, and this is a urethane rubber. And I want to show you the different properties that these pieces of material have. So the plastic double nail pad is a little bit more shiny, and it's very rigid. It has very little flex to it. Sometimes when it comes out of the mold, it doesn't come out perfectly flat. It can have some concave to it, or it can be warped. So here it is sitting on the anvil, and you can see how it rocks about. It can have a lot of distortion, and I'll show you later on how we can resolve that if you end up having a pair that's sent to you that are really warped. The flat black, or matte black, is the urethane rubber, and you can see that it has quite a bit of give to it. So there's the different properties between these two. Doesn't mean, it's just being aware of which pad you're using and what purposes it's going to be for. More traction on the ground for this, less slippery. This will be less likely to invert. This is an Arab urethane pad. It's 3/8 instead of 1/2 inch. More flexible, but less material. So if you're not wanting as much height, just another great option. As far as glue adhering to these materials, glue adheres really well to the urethane when it's prepped properly. It does not adhere to the plastic. It's a tricky material to glue to. There are some tricks that you can do to make it work, but we'll cover that in another section. So the next step is we're going to trace the horse's foot onto the double nail pad, and we're going to do it two different ways. We're going to do it on a live horse, and we're also going to do it on this composite foot here. And the reason we're going to do it on a composite foot is I'm going to build a shoe that attaches to this foot for the simplicity of the process of building the system. So we have trimmed and mapped and prepared our foot ready for a shoe. So we're going to trace a template of this foot onto this double nail pad. With the widest part of our foot here, we're going to just put some little marks that go and extend up the hoof wall, so as a reference point so when we're tracing our shoe, we'll have a place to mark on our shoe where the widest part of the foot is. So what I like to do is cradle my pad material or in the palm of my hand here, and catch the heel bulbs and my shoe together, like so. One swoop, and then where we marked our widest part of the foot, we can put a little line on each side as a reference point. And then when we take the shoe off, we'll also mark our lateral branch. So another way of, instead of bringing the foot forward, is you can do it from when you're underneath the horse, and you're going to place your fingers at the end of your pad and at the end of the toe and cradle it like so. And when you have it in this position, you can go from your heel around to your toe, heel from around to your toe, and then still catch the widest part of your foot on both sides. And then mark your lateral branch. Okay. So you notice that I didn't finish my heels. Well, one of the handy things of having marking on your shoe the widest part of your foot is you can have this as a reference part for attaching different pieces. It also can be used for helping achieve your 50-50 ratio. So now that I've done that, I can have an idea of where I want my heels to end, like so. And it's okay if you have it a little long or a little wide, because you can always trim it down. So I'm going to choose the hard plastic for against the foot in this application. And remember when I was talking about how sometimes they come out of the mold all warped. So here's a shoe that's all warped, and I'm going to have the concaved section of this shoe against the foot surface, like so. Okay, and when I go ahead and trace my foot, like so, and so. So with one of the things is we trace the foot on the back of the pad and then the front of the pad, but in this circumstance, the pad is really concaved in the center, and I didn't like how it came out traced on the shoe. So sometimes you just readjust and you go, I actually would prefer it right here in the middle. So you somehow figure out a way of holding your pad in the middle of the shoe where the most convex is in this pad, and we're just going to retrace this like so. Like that. We have our little reference point from the widest part of our foot. And I like where this is positioned on this pad for this application. So I'm going to show you two ways of cutting out a double nail pad. The first one will be with a jigsaw, and we'll also do it with a bandsaw. So, 1 second. So safety, right? Protect your foreheads, keep your fingers in front of the blades. All right. So sometimes when you're using a bandsaw and you're going around a radius, your blade will get pinched or the material will get pinched. So if you put little relief cuts in here as you're going around, they'll just fall off as you're going around. So depending on how you're going to attach your double nail pad will also depend on how you cut it out. So this one was cut very close to the line, and this would be as if you were gluing it maybe directly onto the foot, or if you're nailing it on. And this one, we have a little bit extra material on the sides, and we would use that for maybe if we're using screws, and we're screwing them from the side or screwing them from the top, and then you top dress it when you're done. Now that it's a little bit rich, we want to fine tune it, and there's a couple of different ways of doing that. You can use your rasp and the vise, you can finish it up with the bandsaw, jigsaw, or you can use a grinder. So we're going to nail this shoe on, so we want to have a nice tight fit, especially from the widest part forward. Okay. So before you lose your widest part of your foot mark, I'm going to bring it into the inside of my shoe, and the inside of my shoe, so I still have a reference point. So while I was there, I went ahead and just softened my heels and boxed it just a little bit to start with how I prepare the landing, and we'll fine tune the adjustments after we have our double nail pad insert that we're going to attach to this. Now, if you remember how when these come out of the mold, sometimes they can be warped. So this shoe's a little bit warped. So what I'm going to do now is just show you a simple way of leveling this. So if I were to try remove some of my material here like this with a radius, I'm not going to have a success in creating a nice flat surface. The multi-tool has a flat surface on the top of the belt that works really well at flattening. Since we don't have one of those here in the corner, you can just use a sharp rasp. And as I'm filing here, you can see that it's hitting some spots and not others. So I'm just going to run around this until I feel like I've got a nice flat surface. All right, so we'll call that close for now. We have two double nail pad options. One's a 1/2 inch thick, one's thinner, right? And so one of the things you can think about when we're adding these together is how much height is this gonna build when we're putting an insert on. So for this size of foot today, I'm gonna choose the thinner of the two materials, and this is the Arab double nail pad. For starters, we'll just go ahead and trace our original shoe to our insert. All right, so we're gonna want this smaller though. So there's a couple ways of doing that. One, you could just get a shoe that would fit smaller on the inside of it and just trace that smaller shoe. So this would maybe be a double aught shoe. So we'll go find a double aught shoe and we'll just trace it. So we have traced out, this is our double nail pad insert. This is the tracing of our shoe here, but we want our insert to be a 1/2 inch to the inside of this shoe, all the way around. So one way of doing that is just getting a shoe that's smaller, a 1/2 inch smaller on both sides, and go ahead and tracing your shoe onto it. Another way would be using a divider and coming in a 1/2 inch all the way around, like so. Actually, I'm going to come all the way to the heel on this. That's another way. Okay, so now that I have my little reference points, I can go ahead and connect my dots. All right, and I'm going all the way to the heel on this area. Okay, so I left it a little rich and then I'm going to clean it up with my grinder. All right, so here's our insert. And it's okay that this is a little rich. We can come back with that and clean it up all together in one system once I've screwed it on. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and screw this onto my shoe now. So we can then transfer our widest part of the foot from the foot surface to the ground surface. And once again, we have some dots that we can connect. Like like so. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and screw this in together now. Where we end up wanting to make adjustments with these can vary. So I'm going to place my screws in areas that if I need to put a bevel into my insert, I'm not going to end up hitting it with a rasp. So I'm going to go ahead and set these back just a little bit and also countersink them. Yeah. So if we're wanting to make adjustments to our double nail pad and the screw's sticking up and proud, it's very difficult to make those adjustments. So we're going to go ahead and countersink this so our screws sit down flush or even recessed a little. It's really handy having an assortment of screws. So 3/4 inch, 1 inch, 1.25 inch, 1.5 inch, sheetrock screws, and have them in a little bin. And so when you need different attachments, you can just go in and reach the size screw length that you need. So to save you a little bit of work, having the right length of screw is super valuable. So there's a 3/4 inch, here's a 1 inch, the shiny one's 3/4 inch. We're also using a thinner pad. So I'm not going to put all my screws in. I'm going to go ahead and clean up the back of my shoe so it matches up. So we have now a double nail pad system ready to be attached. And this could be attached multiple ways. We're going to nail this one on. One of the things to just remember when you're putting your double nail pad is you got the right length of your screws aren't coming through, so on and so forth, and these are just fine. All right. So now that I've cleaned up the back of the shoe the way I like it and have it kind of positioned where it's ready to nail on, I'm going to take my insert off so it's easier to attach my nails. So we'll do a little scribe here so we have a reference point to line everything back up so it's in the exact same position of where we took it off. One of the things that's handy when you go back to get under the horse and put this back on, depending on the horse and how long you're holding up the leg, it's handy having already your screws in your double nail pad insert. So you're efficient once you're under the horse. So we need to place our nail holes now. So on our model here is our sole wall junction. All right, so roughly, if we were to use our divider, 1/4 inch, you can come in 1/4 inch and make a mark. You can also hold your marker right where you would want your nail to be placed, and then transfer that right into your shoe. So this is roughly 1/4 inch. Here's the widest part of my foot. Widest part of my foot. In this circumstance, I'm going to do a nail here, nail there, split the difference, nail here, nail there, split the difference. After I have drilled my nail holes, we'll go ahead and countersink a little bit so when we drive our nails, they have a nice place to sit into and it doesn't push the material out as much. So just nail this on like you would in any other application. So once you're done nailing on your shoe, go ahead and top dress it, finish your clinches, have your foot prepared, ready to go. Even knock down your nail heads a little bit if necessary with your rasp, all right? Once you've done that, you can then go ahead and line up your first screw, then line up your back screws. And this is where it's handy having all your screws already ready to go. Normally a horse would flinch if you did that. All right. So here we have a double nail pad insert system. We can now watch our horse go. Sometimes you can see how it hasn't fully set down in here. So back your screw out and then just tighten it up, like so. So from here you can watch your horse go and adjust your landing. You can adjust your taper, you can file and break over. Maybe this isn't the correct insert and you need a wedge. You pop this off and you can put on a different insert. There's multiple options with this type of shoeing. Good morning, I'm Chris Nicholas. I'm the Vice President of the ELPO. Today I'm going to show you an efficient way of attaching rails to a double nail pad. So these are the tools that we're going to need for this project today. We're going to need a drill gauge, a T-nut, that's a 1024, a 1024 screw, a 3/16 drill bit, a 1/4 inch drill bit, a 3/4 inch spade bit, a countersink bit, a marker. We've got two different options for our rails. One are plastic, one's aluminum. And we have a drill and an impact gun. So in the past, I have used sheetrock screws to attach them. And when we go ahead and screw this into our double nail pad, it can often work for the first time, but it's very easy to over tighten it and strip it out. So this technique of how I'm going to show you through this process is a strong way to help resolve this problem. All right. So it sometimes is a little bit tricky to line up the peg and this hole and to have these two line up together. So I'm going to show you the process of how we do that. We're going to start with a 3/16 drill bit to drill a hole to sit for a peg. On the black pegs, there is a little dot right here in the center. And I'm going to use that little dot as a reference point with the widest part of my shoe. And the curve here matches up with the curve of our nail line or the fullering in our shoe. So I'm going to line up my dot with the widest part of the foot. I'm going to put a little dot right underneath here where my peg needs to be. Right, like so. And while I'm putting a dot here, I'm going to go ahead and do the same process and put a dot on the other side, just to be efficient. So on my other rail, here's my little dot. Line it up with the widest part of my foot. See where my peg needs to go. All right, I like it. A handy tool to have in your trailer is this little tool that helps you find what size of a diameter that you're looking for. So in this case, this fits in a 3/16 hole, and so that helps me determine what drill bit to use. So this process that I'm going to show you, we're doing it in a double nail pad today, but we also can use it in plywood, and you also can use it in aluminum. The process is very similar. So with this rail, there's a little tiny taper on it, and in harder material, without putting a little countersink on your hole, your rail ends up staying up above the material. So the next step is to countersink your holes a little bit. I've found that if you don't do this in harder material, that it often can break off your peg here. So I'm going to use the aluminum rails in this video just so you can see the contrast. Step 3, we're going to use the same drill bit that we used to put for our peg, which is a 3/16, to drill all the way through our double nail pad. We're going to then use this T-nut, which is a steel collar that's already drilled and tapped, to be what we use to insert our screw into. And this is a 1024 screw. So the rail is going to be on the ground surface, and the T-nut is going to be on the foot surface. And so because it's on the foot surface, we want it to sit nice and flush, and we're going to countersink it with a spade bit. It's a 3/4 inch spade bit. One of the unique things about T-nuts is they have these little steel prongs. So when we hammer these into the material, it helps anchor it. So then we want to find the size of this outer diameter of the shaft. So we can slide it down here until we find what that dimension is. And it says it's a 1/4 inch. Here we have our recessed area for our T-nut to now fit into, and the correct diameter for us to hammer it in. So I didn't countersink it quite enough. Since I've hammered it in, one of the ways to hammer it back out is to put your screw in here. You can tap it out. I can then go back to my spade bit, countersink it just a tiny bit more. And that is a way of problem solving it if it wasn't completely flush. All right. There it is, money. So now our T-nut is perfectly flush with our shoe. So now that we have attached our collar, we can now screw this in like it would be any other shoe. With this technique, you can use it for multiple applications. You can use it to make a hospital plate. You can use it for adding traction into your shoe. Use your creativity and use it for what you need. Hey guys, my name's Chris Nicholas. I'm the Vice President of the ELPO. Today we're going to show you two different ways of doing hospital plates. The first one's going to be with 3 holes and the second one's going to be with 4 holes. So the tools we're going to need are a drill gauge, a 5/16 T-nut, 5/16 screws. This drill bit is 1/4 inch. 5/16, a 3/4 inch spade bit, countersink bit, silver marker, a shoe to help us make a template, drill, impact, jigsaw, grinder. We've got a couple different double nail pads on the table here. This is your rubber double nail pad. It's flexible. This is your plastic double nail pad. It is not flexible, it's hard. And this is your Arab double nail pad. It's thinner. This is 3/8, this is 1/2 inch. So the first hospital plate we're going to make today is the 3-hole hospital plate. Here's the shoe that we fit to our foot. We need to cut a window into it. This particular material is made out of the plastic double nail pad, and the reason we're choosing the plastic double nail pad is it's not going to invert and it's going to stay rigid. The pad that we're going to choose to use for the hospital plate piece is the 3/8 arrow pad. All right. This particular shoe ends up being a double-aught performance hind, and it just fits the template that I need for cutting out a window, as well as I'm going to use the outside of this shoe for helping me make my button. I've already created a line through the widest part of my shoe, and I can use the same lines on this shoe for the widest part of the shoe and line them up. I might not use this hole, but it's going to help me bring symmetry into my hole. I maybe make it bigger or adjust it after I've made my lines. All right. So when I place my shoe onto my foot, I realize that I want a little bit more space. So I'm going to bring down through here, and I may have a little bit more area up here. But I'm going to cut it out first and see what it looks like, and if I need to make any adjustments, I will after I've got a smaller hole. I'm going to drill a couple holes in here so I can have a starter hole for my jigsaw. So now that I can see a window into my foot, I want to see how much of a window do I need, and I'm going to make some little adjustments here. All right, so now I'm going to clean up the rest of my hole. So this is the foot surface of the shoe, and I'm just going to take the sharp edges off. So I've cut out my window, and I've softened my edges and given a little bit of sole relief on the foot side of the shoe. So you might be thinking, why didn't I just cut this little piece off and just keep a nice half crescent moon? Well, this is a little talingi. It's not a thingy, it's a talingi. And the reason we want this little talingi there is when we put our T-nut in here, it has given us some more material to attach this to. If we have it too far forward, it gets in the way of creating mechanics and breakover. If we have them on the side for the 4-prong, we're not able to put our mechanics into the shoe either. So for this application, we have this little talingi here to allow us to put the mechanics into our hospital plate. So this is a performance double art hind. I've chose this shoe to be my template for my hospital plate. I'm lining up the tabs on the shoe with the widest part of my shoe, so when I build it, it'll match up. Like so. So now I'm going to cut this out. So now I'm going to create the mechanics into my hospital plate. I want the pivot point to start at the widest part of the foot. What I've found to work well is to not try grind everything all at once. I do an increment and I do overlapping grinding marks so that I have a nice smooth plane. Next, I'm going to create some mechanics laterally and medially. So I'm going to mark the area that I want to preserve. And then I'm going to go ahead and remove this area there. And this area here. And lastly, I'm going to touch up my heels. So the process is the same if I'm using a sheet of aluminum, 1/2 inch double nail pad, 3/8 double nail pad. Process is just the same. So now I'm going to attach one T-nut to my toe first, and the reason I'm only going to do one is it's going to anchor it for me and hold it in place. Another way of doing it is I could take 2 sheetrock screws and go zip and do all 3 at once, but I think I like just doing one at a time. Okay. It's a cleaner look. So the first hole I'm going to drill is the hole that the screw is going to go through, and I'm going to go through both my hospital plate and my shoe. So to make sure that I'm leaving enough room for my T-nut, I'm going to go ahead and place it on here. And that's where I'm going to drill my hole. So to help me hold my pad in place, I'm just going to use a little set screw so it doesn't move around on me. All right. Second step, I'm going to countersink my pad that'll fit the contour of my screw. All right. At this point, I can remove my hospital plate. I'm going to countersink for my T-nut. Double check to see it's deep enough and that it's flush, and it is, especially in this area by the toe. The next step we're going to do is put a 5/16 drill hole. And now we can hammer in our T-nut. It's nice and flush, it's lower than the shoe, no chance of having slow pressure. Now we can attach our first screw. This will hold it nice and tight for us to do our second one. So just in case I need to create any more mechanics in this shoe, I'm going to set my hospital plate screws just a little bit on the inside so I can make any last adjustments after I watch the horse go. Okay. So once again, I'm going to use the drill bit that is the same size as my screw, and I can go all the way through on both this time. Countersink. I can now remove my hospital plate for the second time. Take my spade and my drill bit with me. Take my 15/16 drill bit, drill it out. All right. Our T-nuts are nice and flush, no chance of sole pressure. So don't suck it down all the way tight at first. Kind of let each screw help self-align, and then I tighten it up. So now I have a package of a hospital plate that has mechanics built into it. So this package allows us to remove our insert that is also a hospital plate and be able to treat part of the foot that needs to be medicated. This window can be moved to a heel, can be put on the side of the foot. There's multiple ways of doing this. So the reason for a 3-hole hospital plate is it allows us to get medial lateral turning capabilities. If we had a hole here and there, it limits how much mechanics we're able to build into our shoe. The process of doing a 4-hole hospital plate is very similar to a 3-hole hospital plate, the difference being is that in this application, my pad is a little bit bigger. It doesn't have any mechanics built into it. I've made my insert or hospital plate about 1/4 inch smaller than my shoe, so I have a little bit of a lip for my casting material to hook on when I cast this on. So the process of attaching this double nail pad as a hospital plate to our plastic shoe here is very similar to if you're using an aluminum shoe or a steel shoe. And so in order to have all 4 of our holes line up correctly and not be offset, we're going to start by doing one at a time, and we'll do this step all the way through and screw it on. It'll be our clamp. Then we'll do the second one we'll attach will be back in the heel. This will be our second clamp, which will hold it from pivoting around, and then we can do our third and fourth together. This process works really well whether you're using an aluminum shoe, steel shoe, plywood, or a double nail pad. To position, so I'm going to position my T-nuts on the foot side. This way I can see where my sole relief is, I can envision where my heels are, and I can place them in an area that I think is going to be usable for this hospital plate in each application. So I'm going to mark my first one. And what I'm doing here with my marker is I'm just marking the top and the bottom, splitting the difference, creating my center, putting it back on. I'm going to go ahead and drill each one of these holes. I'm just using the set screw in the back as a clamp. So the temptation to maybe drill all these holes at once may be high, but just do one at a time for this moment. Now that we have our first screw attached, we can go ahead and use the next one as a clamp. I normally like to do the one that's diagonal from it. All right. Now that I have these two attached, I can go ahead and drill my last two. And now I can. So we have a 1/4 inch lip all the way around. This shoe is ready to be casted on for a double nail pad hospital plate system. So here's a double nail pad system that is very similar to a clog that's right out of the box. When you have a double nail pad system, you're able to take off your insert and replace it with different options. So we could make a wedge pad insert. We could create a banana shoe, rocker shoe insert. We could just create some buttons. We might be able to put a light bulb insert on here, and I'm going to show you each one. So being that I already have a template for my insert, I'm going to go ahead and trace this onto my wedge pad. And I'm going to have it closer to the back of my wedge pad where I have a little bit more material to attach my screws through. If I have it up front close here, there's not a lot of material. When I screw it up, it tends to bubble up. I still like to use a little reference point for my widest part of my shoe. So this is a wedge pad for a wedge pad insert, and this is a urethane double nail pad. And when we cut this one out, we're going to make it into a banana shoe insert. So I have cut out my 3-degree wedge pad. We could put it on like this, but in order to just clean it up a little, I'm going to soften the sharp edges, roll my edges a little, and just clean it up a little bit. Now we're ready. We've got our screw holes countersunk and ready to attach it. So I like to preset my screws into my insert, so when I go to the horse, I'm not having to fumble around for screws or not dropping them, and it's more efficient. So sometimes when you're putting on an insert, it doesn't get screwed in all the way, and the tendency is to want to just screw harder, but go ahead and back your screw out, and then try it again. And then I'll take my rasp and tidy up my landing, do any little adjustments if needed. So the next insert that we're going to make is a banana shoe insert. And here's the widest part of our shoe. So we're going to mark a little before and a little front so the horse has a stable spot to stand. And then we'll taper from here forward to the toe and from here back to the heel. And then we'll clean up our edges for a little bit of leverage reduction. So I'm roughly 3/4 of an inch back from the widest part of the shoe. And same with the front. So I'm going to preserve this area in the middle. Might have a slight taper into it, but we're going to slowly taper from this line forward and from this line backwards. So we have attached now the banana shoe double nail pad insert, and we're going to take it over to the anvil here and show you the mechanics. So as the foot leaves the ground, here's your gentle mechanics moving forward and your taper in the back of the shoe for the landing. So this is our 3-degree wedge pad button that fits on here. We're going to also create what we would call a light bulb button. And I'm going to use the 3-degree wedge pad and create a little bit more mechanics so it has easier turning left and right or medial lateral and a little bit softer in the landing. So I'm going to use a slightly bigger template. I picked a shoe that fit close to the outer rim of my double nail pad, so I have a little bit more material to taper my wedge pad. All right, so I'm going to cut this out and then I'll go through the process of how I prepare this pad. All right, so we're going to create a double nail pad light bulb insert. So I'm going to just place my shoe on here to help me find some basic reference points. We have the widest part of our shoe, but we also want to find the center of our shoe this way. All right. This will allow me to preserve areas that I don't want to grind away. All right, so this is an area we want to save. We're going to create a bevel on both sides of this. I'm just going to use an arch of a shoe to help me create this light bulb button. All right, so we're going to cut out this area here and then create some tapers in the back for the landing. So my favorite way of removing the two portions on each side of this shoe, the medial and lateral to help with breakover, is to just do a little magic and go abracadabra, poof, and that happens like that. So in this circumstance, my light bulb button is a tiny bit too long, so we'll just trim it down. So this is a light bulb button. Has a gentle taper forward and lots of medial lateral breakover. So I like my screws to be in order. It doesn't matter, but it does look professional when you have your screws line up and has a nice pattern on here. So there's a little bit of a lip on my light bulb button at the toe. I'm going to just soften that, round it off, and same with the heel. I'm just going to soften the edges and blend it all together. So there are multiple ways of creating buttons. If you need a small button, you can use a part of a frog, natural balance frog insert pad. You can also use some scrap material you have laying around. So instead of me cutting out a piece of this pad, I'm just using a piece of scrap material. In this case, it's an offset from a double nail pad. I'm just using the inside of a shoe. I referenced the widest part of the shoe and its little tab here, traced it around, flipped it around, and traced this side, and now I have a button that I can taper or create whatever I need. So we've been building all different kinds of inserts a day and hospital plates, and sometimes you go, which insert do I use? And right here is what we call a button. And sometimes you start with this. And what you can do with the button is you can place it in the middle of the foot, you can move it to the back, maybe you move it to the outside, to the inside, maybe even move it towards the toe. And each time we make these little adjustments, we can take the horse out, ask it to walk, trot, go in a circle, and see how this horse responds and gives us back feedback and information. One of the beautiful things about a button is it's simply just asking a horse a question. And what do they say when we put it on in different places? So as a starting point, if I'm unsure where to go, I'm often just going to place it in the middle of the foot, watch the horse go, allow the horse to give me some feedback and make decisions on where I might move this button after I've watched it move. So as you saw on the anvil, this can create a fair amount of instability in the foot. And even though it may seem unstable at the moment, it can help us gather information to see what the horse needs. If it's left on for too long, occasionally this instability can create muscle fatigue and doesn't allow the stay apparatus to lock. So to be aware of a button, sometimes we leave it on, but most of the time we use it for asking a horse a question on then how to create one of these inserts that are here in front of us.